deals in leadership. And as a fellow real estate entrepreneur, I couldn't think of anybody else other than you.
You're going to have to look outside of that industry and find a bunch more people, right?
And well, I'm so used to making certain deals happen in this industry that it's like I'm naturally gravitating toward real estate women, and it's just they're far and few in between of us. And so loving your story, of course, I'm obsessed with you. I've watched your stuff over the years. I'm from former New Yorker, rehabilitated to Charlotte, North Carolina. And
you're funny.
Yeah, I needed the heat. Like I can't deal with that. I can't deal with the shoveling. There's no winter coat here. We're doing short every day.
That's funny.
So let me start out with the first question. Is literally the $1,000. So how did you turn the $1,000 into your empire? I'm going to call it the $1 billion empire. How do you tell the story about the $1,000 and how that has helped you to progress?
Okay, you want the short version of that, like the high points, right?
It's your show, whichever one you're more comfortable with.
So I'll start with getting the $1,000, and that was nothing more than pot luck because I met my first boyfriend while waitressing at a diner, and within a year he had suggested that with my personality I'd be great at real estate, and I figured I'd give it a shot. I had 22 other jobs. That was my 23rd, and so I figured why not? Give it a whirl, right? But from the very get-go, that business, which was my renting apartments, and I had 2 roommates on East 86th Street. So I did it from my home. And from the very get-go, is there such a word as get-go? From the very get-go? Feels odd to me, but whatever that word is, okay. It wasn't even like working. I mean, I had worked hard my whole life, but it just seemed like the day flew by because in my opinion, all it was I was opening doors for people and chatting them up. And writing an ad and placing in the New York Times. It was a very, very simple business. A little 3-line ad in the New York Times. Your phone rings. Oh, you're interested? Let me show you the apartment. Not very sophisticated a business, right? But I was the sole salesperson for probably 6 months, as I recall, maybe a little less. And then I found that I got an extra apartment rented, and I had an extra $350. More than my overhead that I needed, And I thought, whoa, I'll take that $350 and I'll hire somebody else and pay for their ad and their phone. And that was the beginning of building a business. You're really not a business until you hire your first person, I feel.
Right.
Well, for me, it seemed that way. It was me renting apartments versus once I hired somebody, suddenly it was a family and a business, you see. And I just continued that very simple math and method for the rest of my life. When I had 50 salespeople, if I saw that I had receivables of $400,000 coming in 3 months, I only needed $200,000, and I could see that profit, I would take the $200,000, divide by what my annual overhead was per desk, which was, let's say, $40,000, and that would mean I could hire 4 more people. I would immediately go out and hire 4 people and put 4 desks and 4 phones. And I just did exactly that. I mean, it wasn't like a sophisticated business. I don't think one would have worked. But it was in response to whether I saw extra cash coming in, I would just hire more people. And then over however many years, 20 years or so, I found I had 1,000 people and many, many officers. And it was pretty not sophisticated with regard to figuring a business plan. I don't even think I thought of it as a business plan. It's just like, how far could I go? What I got in my pocket, how far could I go?
Right.
What was my motivation? I think you asked her. I saw it in the thing at one point. I think it was this question. Well, I was totally turned on by being the leader, honestly. Every other job I ever had, I worked for some guy who told me what to do. The most enjoyable jobs I had were the multiple waitressing jobs I had over the years because I felt like I had my own counter. I worked on a commission basis. I could hustle. I could talk. So I felt most independent waitressing. But this brought waitressing to a new level. It was called real estate brokerage. And rather than serving the food, I was serving up the apartments, right? And it paid much better. I could see the potential in it immediately. But I really just had a desire to create a family, much like my mother's 10 kids. We were all happy. We clammed together in our little 2-bedroom flat. And we were a very happy family, and we worked as a team because my mother was a terrific leader and powerhouse. I don't think I recognized it then. I just thought she was stubborn. Now I see that she was a great mom. And I just wanted to be a great mom. I wanted to have the happiest people and doing the happiest work and all doing well and shining. And I adored them and did anything for them, just like my mother did for us.
Right.
And that was the people formula that seemed to work very well in building a business because they loved me back. You love people, they love you back. If you are very certain about which way you want to lead or where you're going and they love you, they'll follow you. So that kind of came rather naturally, the whole thing, you know. That would be my best answer, I would think.
I love the fact that you have said people and your addiction to making sure you get the best people, surround yourself with the best people. How important do you believe, because I deal with this a lot, where people just hire anybody. It's just, you know, just hire anybody, you know, and not necessarily cherish the people that they hire and nurture those relationships. How important is it for you as a leader to hire the best people, nurture them?
Oh, it's everything. I mean, just look at it if you think of it any other way, in my opinion. I'm very opinionated on that. If you hire mediocre people, you get mediocre results.
Right.
I make that. I'm sure it's probably an expression somewhere if you look for it. But if you can be very particular who you let in your home, that's how I saw it. Who I let in my home, and when I got a clunker in that I didn't know was a clunker, I got rid of them as fast as they came in the door. No questions asked. Moved right in. Moved right out, rather, that Friday. And the reason for that is I saw them as the enemy inside the house. If they were negative, sucking people's energy, not able to sell or cover their overhead, they were drained. And so the money I was putting out to support them without them bringing money in could have gone into the pockets or the advertising budget of someone who's very deserving. So I was very clear on not only who I would let in, and very particular about my interviewing. I was always in a rush to hire because I was always in a mad rush to build a company quickly, but I was never in a rush to find the right person. But they found me. And, you know, what happened after a short while is if you surround yourself with very capable, positive people, they bring people into you. And birds of a feather fly together, as they say.
Right.
So their recommendation was typically far better than I would get in a what today would be a Craigslist ad. At the time, it was a Village Voice ad and a New York Times ad. A salesperson wanted, you know. And so I just wound up surrounded with excellent people. I had a huge advantage being a female that most people think was a disadvantage because it was an industry owned by men but worked predominantly by women. And I had a huge advantage being the only woman owned company. And women naturally trusted me more, and they should because I was very trustworthy. And so that was a great advantage. It was not a good advantage when I was selling, which I did for many years, because if I had a very pushy a male client and they wanted to push on me to reduce my commission, I learned in short order that they let me ask my dad. Because they weren't going to respect me saying no. I would just immediately invent my dad, who, of course, was a printing press foreman over in Trenton, New Jersey, supporting his other 7 kids at home. But I would say, let me call you back. And then I called him back and said, I spoke with him at length. I really told him what a phenomenal client you were, blah, blah, blah. But he said, absolutely not. He has to get the full 6%. And they would say, okay. Now, if I had played myself and said, when I was hit on, well, I really think I deserve the 6%. I really don't want it. So those guys would have mowed right over me. So being a woman, I didn't command the respect when they wanted to play hardball. But I invented a man to play hardball with, and that was easy.
I did an alter ego study on that just recently where we went for a huge contract, and my former assistant's name, well, is Sean. And in order to get the contract, we had to, and this was after Sean had left, we had to use Sean's name to get it because we were running
Sean
into a lot.
was a male or a female?
Sean was a male, but I had his email address for almost a year after he left my company.
Wow.
And
he didn't mind, right?
He didn't mind. He knew that, and I told him it was going to be continuing to stay here. And we went for this huge contract, and we got the same resistance as a bunch of women. And then I just said, let's send the same email through Sean's email address. And it was like a yes.
Absolutely.
It was like our alter ego. So sometimes you have to be a little bit more innovative and figure it out.
Well, you know what it is? It's nothing more than good marketing as I see it because It's about first impression. If the first impression of the wrongful guy doing the hiring, he's got his head not on straight, thinks that a guy is going to do a better job than a woman, you're going to have a hard time convincing them differently until you're in on the job. But if that's the first impression, pull up a guy, stick him in there.
It's a shame we still have to do this in 2017.
Less so, I think. I've been in business a long time. I think much less so today. Much less so.
That's
I'm
true.
happy to report. Yeah.
It has to. It's less, but it's still something that some of us face. So one of the things that I loved about your TED Talk.
By the way, one other thing I didn't say about hiring, because you really asked about hiring, and my first thought I forgot to get out. I think the key on hiring is always hiring attitude over experience. I never look at a resume when I'm interviewing today, nor back then. I just focus on the person, try to size them up. Because if you look at the resume, you're guided into thinking what they're capable of, where they were, how long they were. It's basically like almost cocktail chatter. So you were at XYZ for 6 months.
Right.
Why'd you leave? You just take people on face of how are you? What are you interested in? Tell me about your family. Tell me your mom. You really can get an attitude barometer from the way they communicate on those things versus the typical standard answers. And you don't even know who wrote the resume. You don't know if it's their resume. But if you talk to them one-on-one as an individual, you get a far cleaner read on someone, I believe.
And so you never look at the resume at all?
No, not at all. I mean, afterwards, and then check them out, like what they said. Is a lie, and is there? But no, not. Of course, sends you in the wrong direction.
That's a good way to look at things because it's so true. You can network and figure out if people are who they say they are. I've seen where people, just like you said, have written other people's resumes or bios, and then you meet the person, it is not the same.
Let me say something. The last 2 weeks, I've rewritten 2 resumes for friends of my son who's 24. I've written the sales cover letter for one of them. Powerful. He got the interview because he wanted join a very fancy sales organization, and I knew it'd do well. His name was on it. I edited it. But that guy getting that letter called him because of the strength of that cover note. You don't know who's writing that stuff. You really don't.
So true. So true. I love that. So it's more like integrity, more than a resume.
Or lack of.
Oh, lack of. That's true. That's true. So, when you were talking in your TED Talk about rethinking failure, one of the biggest quote that stood out to me are my biggest successes came on the heels of failure. How do you see the value of failure, especially when it comes to women, and framing that just how, because we do a lot of statistics and a lot of data with a lot of organizations outside of Inc. and as well as within Inc., mostly with Harvard Business Review, that really state that the number of women that are entering businesses are of course, at an alarming rate, but we have solvency issues, funding, and we have fear, we have confidence issues. And so, with all of us chattering about, you're going to fail or things are going to happen, what do you think that women need to recognize in their upward journey about the fear of failure or how failure can accelerate them in future business endeavors?
Well, I don't know if my answer pertains just to women. I think it's true of anyone who's trying to get a business off the ground or grow it. So I'll answer it like for men and women, but it certainly applies to women very well. And maybe that's a specialty I might add to later. But overall, the most important thing is you've got to recognize that building a business, you get far, far more rejections and setbacks and kicks in the gut than you'll get accolades and successes. I mean, if I had to actually figure out the ratio, I'd make a wild-ass guess at 4-to-1. 4 negatives for every 1 positive. In sales, you get 10 negatives for 1 positive. I know that because I documented that over the years. How many customers do we go out with? How many left you high and dry? How many never did anything? In the end, what'd you get? 1 in 10 customers are viable. So, but in building a business, I would say 1 in 4 times up at the bat, you're going to get a solid first base hit, once in a while a home run. But for the most part, you're going to strike out. But in building a business, it's very hurtful because you put your heart and soul into something. You're usually on a string budget. You usually worry about going down. If you're half alive, you're going to worry about going down all the time because it's a reality. You worry about overhead, cash flow, new sales. I mean, your worry list is enormous that you must concern yourself with if you're going to succeed. But after all the rejections, the setbacks, the kicks and like that, then there's a success. And then you go through the whole cycle again, right? And I think you have to realize is that's the reality of building a business. I mean, if you're not going to be good at that kind of stuff, of the negative stuff, you're never going to make it. It's as simple as that. So the upside is the more you can take the negatives, the more practiced you become, and then somewhere along the way, which I learned probably in my third year of business, you realize that after every really big success, there's a flip side to it, and there's a success just waiting for you. And that's when you have your big belly flops that you can actually start to train yourself to say, okay, somewhere in here, something good's going to happen. I truly believe that now. It took me years of rejection to realize that before I saw the light, because I think there's something in the universe that when you really throw yourself off the cliff, and again and again and again, that the universe kind of favors you. It starts to like you better. And when you do it, they rally around you, cry, boom, they're with you. You know what I mean? And so I found that was very true. All of my, whether it be finding the internet, because on the heels of pissing away my first $77,000 on homes on tape, and it being a total failure, because I was looking for a formula, like to save face, and I found this government thing called the internet. Up went my videos onto the internet, and we had 2 sales a week out of London. Whoa, was that a wake-up call, you know?
Wow.
Or I just, even the most basic thing that got me to be a public speaker was when I lost my voice on my first speech. I was so mortified, I thought I'd never show my face on the street again. But then I got over myself and volunteered to teach a course at night and invite real estate people on how to sell real estate. That's something I knew, to get practice at feeling embarrassed and not getting my words or thoughts out properly. And what do you think happened in 12 weeks? I got a little more comfortable with public speaking, and my next speech I didn't lose my voice. You know, so I think you just have to get number one, your head in the right place, that you're going to expect mostly negative feedback. And if you could just stay the course through the negative feedback, you're going to, for every 4, get 1 success, and those are the numbers. And get okay with it. Because that's the way you build a business. I'm pretty efficient as an individual. I got my mother's gene. She's super efficient, like a drill sergeant. So am I. But I have never discovered a faster way, or certainly I'd be using it with a lot less pain. It would be better to have a more efficient way to get success, but I haven't discovered it over all these years.
Wow. That's awesome. And you know what? I love the feedback about it's going to happen. It's like, you know, you can't avoid the negative feedback. I was actually listening to Brandon Burchard this morning talk about if you want to be successful, just get ready. The negativity is going to come. You just don't have to listen to it. It's an option. So you can just be determined
and I'll
what
tell
you
you
really
something
want to
else. The worst feedback comes from within your own firm.
That's
on every good creative endeavor I ever had, I got more friction from inside my company than I did outside. I even remember when I published my first Corcoran report, which was a statistical analysis of conditions and trends in the greater New York City market, is what I put on the top. What was it really? It was an average of 8 apartment sales for the year, and I called it a New York City average. And my own salespeople, I only had 7 at the time, were irate. You can't publish that based on 8 sales. How could that be? We're going to get in trouble. Well, guess what? The New York Times put me on the front page of the real estate section with that little stupid report. and that was the beginning of my discovery of the power of the press and third-party endorsements and being quoted. And I made every press vehicle my best friend in my platform after that. But if I listened to my salespeople, I would pull that report.
Wow.
You know, but I let it run. Bingo. I stepped in crap, as they say. It was the big kahuna. Put me on the map.
Always a good thing. All right, my last question to you is going to be my synonymous question about the power of asking. And so you wrote a letter to Mark Burnett when you got the offer from Shark Tank, then he rescinded, and then you were like, Barbara, I am not going to let him give away my seat. So you decided to write him just a little love note. I'm going to call it a love note. How important do you think that not only was that letter to you personally, but how important is it for all entrepreneurs to learn the importance of fighting for their seat? whatever seat they want to sit
in. Listen, seats don't come easily at any table. If it's a worthwhile table or it's an important table, nobody's going to offer you a seat. Okay? It's funny, I just flashed in my head, with Shark Tank, I got to visit President Obama twice, and when I was in Joe Biden's office, even there were like 12 people standing around looking awkward, not knowing what to do. And I said to Joe Biden, hey, does this kitchenette have any chairs? It was a giant, expensive conference table. Does this kitchenette have any chairs? And he said, oh, excuse me, of course. He waved up his fluttered hands, and all these, what are they, social service, the guards with the guns. They went all over, and suddenly there were 12 chairs at the table, but I had to ask for my chair even then, okay? I think what you have to do is you have to, number one, if you're any good at visualizing your own success, which I was good at. I pictured I'd be the queen of New York real estate. I became it. I pictured that I was going to Hollywood when I signed that contract, and I went and I bought outfits and a new luggage set. I pictured myself signing autographs with the Hollywood sign behind me. I mean, call it a stupid movie, but that's what was in my head. And then when I got it, it didn't compute. What do you mean? What do you mean you changed your mind? What do you mean? Well, of course, the initial reaction, as we all would have, because we're all human beings, is to really be blown away. I was a combination of pissed and disappointed and ashamed and angry, a mixture of all those. And then I felt sorry for myself. I can't believe it. I can't believe after all that work. I can't believe it. And then I got hold of myself. Like, what are you doing? Feeling sorry for yourself? And then 5 minutes later, I wrote one of the most powerful emails I've ever written, right to the point, polite. And I wouldn't say I was romancing him. I basically told him he was wrong. That's it.
Oh, wow.
And he, of course, turned in his heels and invited me out because I suggested an alternate solution. If he had picked another woman for the lone female seat, I said, no problem, but let me come out and compete for it. It's too tantalizing, and he had to do it. And so we competed for the seat, and I won it. Right? But thank God I wrote that letter. But, again, the importance of fighting for the seat, it was more for me, not as much about getting it. I didn't know Shark Tank was going to last a week, a month. Now it's been 9 years. I at first thought it was a fishing show, and I don't fish. I'll learn how to fish. What the heck? But what was most important in fighting for it was my own self-esteem. That I didn't take it laying down and didn't give it, after all of that effort and dreaming, that I didn't give it a final 30%, an extra 30%. The email was the 30% extra. And you know what I found out when I was on the set and working there happily? Maybe a month later is my executive producer said, oh, by the way, you know what I want to mention, Barbara? When we put out all those contracts for people to sign for Shark Tank, we hired twice as many people as we needed. And then we told them all we had changed our mind. You were the only one who wrote an email. That is amazing to me. And these are successful businessmen, right? And maybe a few women even thrown in there, I don't know. But you would think they, of all people, being aggressive and having the money to invest in that show, would have really just stood up and said, just a minute, buddy. Not one. They accepted it. That's amazing to me. So thank God I stood up and asked for my seat, I
love it. I love it. I love the fact that you didn't let it deter you, because sometimes you get into your emotion and you're thinking, well, that's another one, and we move on.
It's easy to roll over, trust me.
Yeah.
It always sounds prudent to say, all right, whatever, next. But it's not until you give it the whole fight, Yeah.
I appreciate you for that, because it actually even serves as a tried and true for me, because sometimes in my own feelings I get like that. But in respecting your time, Barbara, I appreciate it. I will let you guys I'll let you know when the bylines run, and I'll definitely send everything over.
And if you get promoted, just let us know. We'll get promoted for you, okay?
Sure. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Okay, you have a good day. Bye-bye.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.